Two young cadets enter West Point Military Academy. Both are brilliant. Both scored in the top 1% of their class. Both have stellar athletic records and leadership experience that would make any parent proud. Fast forward 6 months. One cadet has quit, packed their bags, and walked away from their military career forever. The other, they're thriving, pushing through the brutal training, and on their way to becoming an elite officer. What made the difference? Was it intelligence? Physical strength? Family background? The answer will shock you. It wasn't any of those things. It was something much more powerful, much more predictable, and, here's the kicker, much more within your control. Welcome to Mind's Quotes, where we unlock the secrets of human potential. I'm about to share with you the most important discovery in modern psychology. A discovery that will fundamentally change how you think about success, failure, and what it really takes to achieve extraordinary things in life. What if I told you that talent is overrated? What if I told you that the kids who struggle in school might actually have a better chance at long-term success than the gifted ones? What if everything you believed about achievement was wrong? Dr. Angela Duckworth spent decades studying why some people succeed while others fail. She examined spelling bee champions, elite athletes, successful entrepreneurs, and military cadets. She analyzed students from inner-city schools and graduates from Ivy League universities. And what she discovered will completely transform your understanding of human potential. She found that there's one trait that predicts success better than talent, intelligence, social skills, good looks, physical health, or even luck. This one trait separates the champions from the quitters, the legends from the forgotten, the extraordinary from the ordinary. That trait is grit. But here's what's incredible, and why you need to stay with me for the next 30 minutes. Grit isn't something you're born with. It's something you can develop. It's something you can cultivate. It's something that can transform your life starting today. By the end of this summary, you'll understand exactly what grit is, how to measure your own grit level, and most importantly, how to develop the kind of unshakable perseverance that turns dreams into reality. You'll learn the 4 psychological assets that make up true grit, and you'll discover practical strategies that you can implement immediately. So hit that subscribe button right now, because this isn't just another book summary. This is your roadmap to achieving anything you set your mind to. Let's dive in. Meet the author, Angela Duckworth's journey. Before we explore the revolutionary concept of grit, let's meet the brilliant mind behind this discovery, Dr. Angela Duckworth. Angela's story is fascinating because it perfectly embodies the very concept she would later study. She didn't start as a psychology researcher. In fact, her path to becoming one of the world's most influential psychologists was anything but linear. After graduating from Harvard, Angela worked as a consultant at McKinsey & Company, one of the world's most prestigious consulting firms. She was successful, well-paid, and by all external measures, thriving. But something was missing. She felt unfulfilled, like she wasn't making a real difference in the world. So she made a dramatic career change. She left her lucrative consulting job to become a 7th-grade math teacher in New York City's public schools. Talk about a leap of faith. From corporate boardrooms to inner-city classrooms, it was a complete transformation. As a teacher, Angela made a startling observation. The students who performed best in her class weren't necessarily the ones with the highest IQs. Some of her most intellectually gifted students would give up easily when faced with challenging problems, while other students, ones who might struggle initially, would persist until they found solutions. This observation haunted her. Why did some students bounce back from failure while others crumbled? Why did some students view challenges as opportunities while others saw them as threats? These questions led Angela to pursue a PhD in psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, where she studied under Dr. Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology. Her doctoral research focused on this mysterious quality that seemed to predict success better than intelligence or talent. She called it grit. Today, Dr. Duckworth is a MacArthur Fellowship recipient. That's the so-called Genius Grant. And her TED Talk on grit has been viewed over 25 million times. She's advised everyone from Fortune 500 CEOs to Olympic athletes to military leaders. But here's what makes her research so powerful. It started with real observations about real people in real situations. Angela didn't develop her theory in an ivory tower. She developed it in the trenches, working with students who faced genuine challenges and obstacles. And that's exactly why her insights are so practical and applicable to your life. What is grit? The core definition. So what exactly is grit? Angela Duckworth defines grit as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. But that simple definition hides profound complexity. Let's break it down. First, notice that grit has two components: passion and perseverance. Most people focus only on the perseverance part, the ability to stick with something when it gets difficult. But passion is equally important. We're not talking about fleeting enthusiasm or temporary excitement. We're talking about a deep, enduring commitment to a particular domain or goal. Think of grit as having the stamina to stick with your future. Not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years. It's living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Here's a powerful way to understand grit. Imagine your goals as a hierarchy, like a pyramid. At the bottom, you have low-level goals, things like, go to the gym today, or finish this project by Friday. These are important, but they're tactical goals. In the middle, you have mid-level goals, things like, get in shape or excel at my job. These are more strategic and require sustained effort over months or years. But at the very top of your pyramid, you have what Angela calls your ultimate concern. Your highest level goal that gives meaning and direction to everything else. For some people, it might be create beautiful art that moves people. For others, it might be build a company that solves important problems, or raise children who contribute positively to the world. People with grit organize their entire lives around their ultimate concern. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment of perseverance is connected to this highest level purpose. Here's what's fascinating. When you have true grit, the setbacks and failures at the lower levels don't derail you. If you miss a day at the gym, it doesn't destroy your fitness goals because you understand it's just one small setback in service of your larger purpose. If a project fails at work, it doesn't crush your spirit because you see it as one experiment in your larger mission. But here's the key insight. Most people operate with what Angela calls goal substitution. They mistake lower-level goals for their ultimate purpose. They think the daily task is the mission, rather than understanding that the daily task serves the mission. Gritty people never lose sight of their ultimate concern. They maintain what Angela calls hierarchical goal consistency. All their efforts ladder up to their highest purpose. This is why some people seem to have unlimited energy and motivation. It's not that they don't get tired or frustrated. It's that their daily actions are connected to something much larger than themselves. What is grit? The core definition. So what exactly is grit? Angela Duckworth defines grit as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. But that simple definition hides profound complexity. Let's break it down. First, notice that grit has two components: passion and perseverance. Most people focus only on the perseverance part, the ability to stick with something when it gets difficult. But passion is equally important. We're not talking about fleeting enthusiasm or temporary excitement. We're talking about a deep, enduring commitment to a particular domain or goal. Think of grit as having the stamina to stick with your future. Not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years. It's living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Here's a powerful way to understand grit. Imagine your goals as a hierarchy, like a pyramid. At the bottom, you have low-level goals, things like, go to the gym today, or finish this project by Friday. These are important, but they're tactical goals. In the middle, you have mid-level goals, things like, get in shape or excel at my job. These are more strategic and require sustained effort over months or years. But at the very top of your pyramid, you have what Angela calls your ultimate concern. Your highest level goal that gives meaning and direction to everything else. For some people, it might be create beautiful art that moves people. For others, it might be build a company that solves important problems, or raise children who contribute positively to the world. People with grit organize their entire lives around their ultimate concern. Every decision, every sacrifice, Every moment of perseverance is connected to this highest level purpose. Here's what's fascinating. When you have true grit, the setbacks and failures at the lower levels don't derail you. If you miss a day at the gym, it doesn't destroy your fitness goals because you understand it's just one small setback in service of your larger purpose. If a project fails at work, it doesn't crush your spirit because you see it as one experiment in your larger mission. But here's the key insight. Most people operate with what Angela calls goal substitution. They mistake lower-level goals for their ultimate purpose. They think the daily task is the mission, rather than understanding that the daily task serves the mission. Gritty people never lose sight of their ultimate concern. They maintain what Angela calls hierarchical goal consistency. All their efforts ladder up to their highest purpose. This is why some people seem to have unlimited energy and motivation. It's not that they don't get tired or frustrated. It's that their daily actions are connected to something much larger than themselves. The 4 psychological assets of grit. Now that we understand what grit is, let's explore how to develop it. Angela identifies 4 psychological assets that, when combined, create extraordinary levels of grit. Think of these as the 4 pillars that support the palace of perseverance. 1. Interest, the foundation of passion. The first pillar is interest. But we're not talking about casual interest or fleeting curiosity. We're talking about deep, abiding fascination with a particular domain. Here's something crucial that most people get wrong. Passion isn't discovered, it's developed. Too many people are sitting around waiting for their passion to strike them like lightning. They think passion is supposed to feel like falling in love, instant, overwhelming, and obvious. But Angela's research shows that's not how it works. Passion emerges gradually through a process of exploration, development, and deepening commitment. Consider the story of world-renowned chef Julia Child. She didn't discover her passion for cooking until she was 36 years old. Before that, she had tried various careers and interests, but nothing really stuck. It was only when she moved to France with her husband and enrolled in cooking school that she began to develop what would become her life's passion. The key insight here is that interests are triggered by interaction with the outside world. You can't develop a passion for something you've never encountered. This is why exposure and experimentation in the early years are so important. But here's the catch. Initial interest is just the seed. It needs to be cultivated through deliberate practice and sustained engagement. Many people experience initial interest in something but then abandon it when the novelty wears off and the real work begins. Gritty people push through what Angela calls the boring middle. That phase where initial excitement has faded but mastery hasn't yet been achieved. This is where most people quit, but it's exactly where gritty people lean in. 2. Practice, the engine of excellence. The second pillar is practice. But not just any kind of practice, deliberate practice. Most people think they're practicing when they're really just going through the motions. True deliberate practice is uncomfortable, effortful, and focused on improving specific weaknesses. Take the example of Benjamin Franklin, who wanted to improve his writing skills. He didn't just write more. Instead, he would take essays by great writers, make notes about their key points, then put the essays away and try to recreate them from memory using his own words. Then he would compare his version to the original and identify specific areas for improvement. That's deliberate practice. It's targeted, it's challenging, and it's designed to push you beyond your current level of competence. Here's what's fascinating about gritty people. They actually enjoy this process. While others see deliberate practice as drudgery, gritty people see it as the pathway to mastery. They've learned to find satisfaction in the process of improvement itself, not just in the final outcomes. Research shows that deliberate practice requires intense concentration and isn't inherently enjoyable. But gritty people have developed what psychologists call flow. They've learned to lose themselves in the process of focused improvement. 3. Purpose, the why behind the what. The third pillar is purpose. This is what transforms interest from a hobby into a calling. Purpose is the intention to contribute to the well-being of others. It's the understanding that your efforts serve something larger than your own immediate interests. Consider the story of David, a maintenance worker at a hospital. Most people might see his job as menial, mopping floors, emptying trash cans, cleaning bathrooms. But David saw his work differently. He understood that his efforts created a healing environment for patients and their families. When he cleaned a room, he wasn't just removing dirt. He was providing comfort to people during some of the most difficult moments of their lives. This sense of purpose transformed David's approach to his work. He would rearrange furniture to make rooms more welcoming. He would learn patients' names and check on their well-being. He saw himself not as a maintenance worker, but as a member of the healing team. That's the power of purpose. It elevates routine tasks into meaningful contributions. But here's something important. Purpose often develops later in the grit journey. Young people typically start with interest, develop their skills through practice, and only later discover how their abilities can serve others. This is why it's crucial not to expect young people to immediately understand their life purpose. Purpose is something that emerges as competence develops and as people gain greater understanding of how their talents can contribute to the world. 4. Hope. The belief that tomorrow can be better. The fourth and final pillar is hope. But this isn't wishful thinking or naive optimism. This is what psychologists call learned optimism. The deep belief that you have agency over your life and that setbacks are temporary and surmountable. Gritty people have developed what Angela calls a growth mindset. They believe that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. They see failure not as evidence of inadequacy, but as information about how to improve. Consider the story of Francesca Martinez, a British comedian who has cerebral palsy. Instead of seeing her condition as a limitation, she reframed it as her unique comedic voice. She calls herself wobbly instead of disabled, and she's built an entire career around finding humor in her experiences. That's hope in action. It's the ability to reframe setbacks as setups for comebacks. Research shows that people with this kind of hope are more resilient, more persistent, and ultimately more successful. They don't waste energy dwelling on things they can't control. Instead, they focus on what they can influence and take consistent action toward their goals. Here's the beautiful thing about these 4 pillars. They're all learnable. You're not born with a fixed amount of interest, practice capacity, purpose, or hope. These are skills that can be developed at any age, in any circumstances. The talent myth. Why being gifted can be a curse. Now let's address one of the most dangerous myths in our culture. The belief that talent is the primary determinant of success. This myth is not just wrong. It's actually harmful. It prevents people from developing grit, and it creates a fixed mindset that limits human potential. Angela's research reveals a shocking truth. In the long run, talent often predicts who will struggle, not who will succeed. Here's why. When we identify children as talented or gifted, we often inadvertently harm their development. These children learn to equate their worth with their natural abilities. They become afraid of challenges because challenges might reveal that they're not as naturally gifted as everyone thinks. Consider the story of 2 students Angela studied. Sarah was identified as mathematically gifted in elementary school. She breezed through early math classes without effort. Teachers praised her natural ability, and her parents were proud of having a math genius. But when Sarah reached advanced calculus in high school, something devastating happened. For the first time in her life, math was hard. She had to study, practice, and sometimes struggle with concepts. Because she had never learned how to work through difficulty, she concluded that she wasn't really good at math after all. She avoided challenging math courses and eventually abandoned her dream of becoming an engineer. Meanwhile, Michael struggled with basic arithmetic in elementary school. His teachers never identified him as mathematically gifted, but his parents emphasized effort over ability. When Michael struggled, they said things like, "You haven't learned this yet," and "Mistakes help your brain grow." By high school, Michael had developed incredible persistence and problem-solving skills. When he encountered difficult math problems, he saw them as puzzles to solve, not as threats to his identity. He went on to become a successful engineer. This pattern repeats across every domain. Natural talent without grit leads to mediocrity, but grit without natural talent can lead to extraordinary achievement. Here's the psychological mechanism at work. When we praise people for their natural abilities, we create what Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset. People with fixed mindsets believe that abilities are static traits that can't be significantly developed. But when we praise people for their effort, strategy, and persistence, we create a growth mindset. People with growth mindsets believe that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. And here's what's fascinating. People with growth mindsets actually perform better than people with fixed mindsets, even when the fixed mindset people have more natural talent. This has profound implications for how we should think about our own potential. If you've ever been told you're not good at something, you need to add one crucial word to that sentence. Yet. You're not good at it yet. But with deliberate practice, persistence, and the right strategies, you can develop competence in virtually any domain. Angela shares the story of her own daughter, who struggled with piano lessons. The piano teacher suggested that she might not be musically inclined. But instead of accepting this assessment, Angela applied grit principles. She helped her daughter set small, achievable goals. She celebrated effort and improvement rather than natural ability. She connected piano practice to larger values and goals. Over time, her daughter not only became competent at piano but actually grew to love it. The supposed lack of natural talent was irrelevant once grit entered the picture. This doesn't mean that natural differences don't exist. Of course they do. But here's the key insight. In the long run, what you do with your natural abilities matters far more than what those abilities are to begin with. The grit scale, measuring your own perseverance. Now let's get practical. How gritty are you? Angela developed a scientific instrument called the grit scale that measures your level of passion and perseverance for long-term goals. The scale consists of statements that you rate on how well they describe you. Let me share some key items from the scale, and I want you to honestly assess yourself as I read them. I have overcome setbacks to conquer an important challenge. New ideas and projects sometimes distract me from previous ones. My interests change from year to year. Setbacks don't discourage me. I have been obsessed with a certain idea or project for a short time but later lost interest. I am a hard worker. I often set a goal but later choose to pursue a different one. I have difficulty maintaining my focus on projects that take more than a few months to complete. I finish whatever I begin. I am diligent. As you consider these statements, you're probably noticing something important. Grit isn't just about working hard. Lots of people work hard. Grit is about working hard on the same thing for a long time. This is what Angela calls consistency of interests. Gritty people don't constantly switch from one passion to another. They find something meaningful and stick with it through thick and thin. But here's something crucial. Having a low grit score isn't a life sentence. Remember, grit can be developed. The scale simply gives you a baseline so you can track your improvement over time. Research shows that grit typically increases with age. Older adults tend to be grittier than younger adults, partly because they've had more time to discover their interests and develop their sense of purpose. But you don't have to wait for age to increase your grit. There are specific strategies you can implement starting today. Here's what high scorers on the grit scale tend to have in common. First, they have what Angela calls ultimate concerns, high-level goals that organize and give meaning to all their other activities. They don't just work hard. They work hard in service of something meaningful. Second, they practice what psychologists call mental contrasting. They visualize their desired future, but they also honestly acknowledge the obstacles they'll face in getting there. This combination of optimism and realism helps them prepare for challenges rather than being blindsided by them. Third, they've developed effective strategies for maintaining motivation during difficult periods. They know how to weather the storms of doubt, discouragement, and temporary failure. Fourth, they surround themselves with other gritty people. They understand that culture is contagious, and they deliberately seek out environments that support and reinforce their long-term commitments. If you scored lower on the grit scale than you'd like, don't despair. Remember, this is just your starting point. Every single aspect of grit can be developed with the right approach and consistent effort. Real-life examples. Grit in action. Let's bring these concepts to life with some powerful real-world examples of grit in action. These stories will show you exactly what grit looks like when it's applied to actual challenges and goals. The Spelling Bee Champions. Angela's fascination with grit began when she studied the National Spelling Bee. These competitions are incredibly demanding. Students must memorize the spelling of hundreds of thousands of words, many of which they've never encountered before. What separates the champions from the also-rans? It's not IQ. Angela found that verbal intelligence had only a modest correlation with spelling bee success. The real predictor was grit. The champions weren't necessarily the smartest kids, but they were the kids who practiced the most. And not just any kind of practice, deliberate practice. They would study word roots, etymology, and language patterns. They would quiz themselves on their weakest words. They would create systems for memorizing difficult spellings. But here's what's most remarkable. They genuinely enjoyed this process. While other kids saw spelling practice as drudgery, the champions had learned to find satisfaction in the gradual accumulation of knowledge and skill. One champion, Anurag Kashyap, described his practice routine. I would study for 3 to 4 hours every day after school. I created flashcards for difficult words and would test myself constantly. When I encountered a word I couldn't spell, I wouldn't just memorize it. I would research its origin, find other words with similar patterns, and make connections. That's grit in action. It's the willingness to do difficult, sometimes boring work in service of a long-term goal. The Military Academy Study. Perhaps Angela's most famous research took place at West Point Military Academy. Every year, about 1,200 new cadets enter West Point. These are exceptional young people, top of their class academically, outstanding athletes, natural leaders. But every year, about 5% of these exceptional cadets drop out before graduation. Why? What separates those who persist from those who quit? Angela measured the grit levels of incoming cadets and then tracked their progress. The results were stunning. Grit was the single best predictor of who would graduate and who would drop out. It predicted success better than standardized test scores, high school rank, athletic ability, or leadership experience. The cadets who scored highest on the grit scale were significantly more likely to survive the rigorous training and graduate from West Point. Even more remarkably, many of the cadets who dropped out were actually more talented on paper than those who persevered. One cadet, Maria Santos, explained her experience. There were definitely people smarter than me, stronger than me, more naturally gifted than me. But I had decided that I was going to graduate no matter what. When things got difficult, and they got very difficult, I would remind myself why I was there and what I wanted to accomplish. I wasn't going to let temporary discomfort derail my long-term goals. The Chicago Teacher Study. Angela also studied teachers in Chicago public schools, many of whom work in challenging conditions with limited resources. She wanted to understand why some teachers thrived while others burned out or left the profession entirely. Again, grit was the key differentiator. The grittiest teachers produced the largest learning gains in their students, even when controlling for other factors like experience, training, and school conditions. These teachers shared several characteristics. They viewed challenges as opportunities rather than threats. When a student struggled, they didn't see it as evidence of the student's limitations, but as information about what teaching strategies to try next. They maintained high expectations for all students, regardless of background or initial ability level. They believed that every student could learn and improve with the right support and effort. They persisted with difficult students rather than giving up on them. They understood that behavioral and academic problems often reflected underlying issues that could be addressed with patience and creativity. One teacher, James Wright, worked in one of Chicago's most challenging schools. His classroom was overcrowded, his resources were limited, and many of his students came from difficult backgrounds. But James refused to use these conditions as excuses. I decided that my job wasn't to complain about the conditions, he explained. My job was to help every student in my classroom reach their potential. Some days were harder than others, but I never lost sight of why I became a teacher. These kids deserved someone who wouldn't give up on them. The entrepreneurship example. Consider the story of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. Sarah wasn't born into wealth or privilege. She didn't have an MBA or extensive business experience. She was selling fax machines door to door when she came up with the idea for footless pantyhose. But Sarah had grit. She spent 2 years researching the hosiery industry, learning about manufacturing, and developing her product. She faced rejection after rejection from manufacturers and investors. Many people told her the idea wouldn't work. But Sarah persisted. She used her own savings to fund the initial production. She personally called department stores to pitch her product. She stood in stores and demonstrated Spanx to customers. Today, Spanx is a billion-dollar company, and Sarah is one of the world's youngest self-made female billionaires. But her success wasn't the result of a brilliant flash of insight. It was the result of sustained effort, persistence through setbacks, and an unwavering commitment to her vision. These examples illustrate a crucial point. Grit isn't about being superhuman. It's about being human in a particularly focused and persistent way. It's about choosing to continue when others choose to quit. The hard thing rule: building grit through deliberate challenge. Now let's get into the practical strategies for building grit. One of Angela's most powerful recommendations is something called the hard thing rule. The hard thing rule is simple but profound. Everyone in the family, parents and children, alike, must choose one hard thing to pursue. This hard thing must require deliberate practice, it must serve a purpose larger than the individual, and the person must commit to it for a sustained period. Here's how it works. Rule number 1. Everyone must do a hard thing. A hard thing is something that requires sustained effort and deliberate practice. It's something that challenges you and pushes you beyond your comfort zone. It might be learning a musical instrument, mastering a sport, studying a foreign language, or developing a particular skill or craft. Rule number 2. You can quit, but not until the season is over, the tuition payment is up, or some other natural stopping point is reached. This prevents people from quitting the moment things get difficult. It teaches the value of honoring commitments and working through temporary challenges. Rule number 3. You get to pick your hard thing. Nobody else chooses for you. This ensures that you have intrinsic motivation and personal investment in the activity. Rule number 4. For high school and beyond, the hard thing must be something that could lead to meaningful contribution to others. This connects individual effort to larger purpose and helps develop the service orientation that characterizes truly gritty people. The beauty of the hard thing rule is that it systematically builds all 4 pillars of grit. Interest: by choosing your own hard thing, you're more likely to select something that genuinely engages you. Practice: the requirement for sustained effort ensures that you develop the discipline and habits necessary for deliberate practice. Purpose: the connection to larger contribution helps you understand how your individual efforts serve something beyond yourself. Hope: by working through challenges and seeing gradual improvement, you develop confidence in your ability to grow and overcome obstacles. Let me share a powerful example of the hard thing rule in action. The Peterson family implemented this rule when their children were young. Their daughter Emma chose violin, which she found extremely challenging at first. There were many times she wanted to quit, her fingers hurt, the music sounded terrible, practice felt boring. But because of the hard thing rule, Emma couldn't quit in the middle of the school year. She had to honor her commitment until the natural stopping point. During that time, something remarkable happened. Emma began to improve. The music started sounding better. She began to enjoy the challenge of learning new pieces. By the end of the year, Emma had developed not just violin skills, but more importantly, she had developed grit. She had learned that initial difficulty doesn't mean permanent inadequacy. She had learned that sustained effort leads to improvement. She had learned that she could stick with something even when it was hard. Emma continued with violin through high school and eventually joined her school orchestra. But the real benefit wasn't musical, it was psychological. Emma had developed the confidence and persistence that would serve her in every area of life. Here's how you can implement your own version of the hard thing rule. Step 1. Choose your hard thing. Select something that genuinely interests you but also challenges you. It should be something that requires regular practice and sustained effort over months or years. Step 2. Define your commitment period. Decide how long you'll stick with this pursuit before you're allowed to reevaluate. This might be a semester, a season, a year, or some other natural milestone. Step 3. Create a practice schedule. Determine when and how often you'll engage in deliberate practice. Consistency is more important than intensity. It's better to practice 30 minutes daily than 3 hours once a week. Step 4. Connect to purpose. Identify how your hard thing might eventually serve others or contribute to something larger than yourself. This connection will sustain you through difficult periods. Step 5. Track your progress. Keep a record of your efforts and improvements. This helps you see progress that might not be immediately obvious and provides motivation during challenging times. The hard thing rule works because it systematically exposes you to the experience of working through difficulty toward mastery. It teaches you that initial struggle is normal and temporary, that improvement comes through sustained effort, and that you're capable of much more than you might initially believe. The culture of grit. How environment shapes perseverance. Individual grit is powerful, but it's even more powerful when it's supported by a culture of grit. Angela's research shows that we're heavily influenced by the people around us, and that gritty cultures can dramatically amplify individual efforts. Think about it. If you're surrounded by people who quit when things get difficult, you're more likely to quit too. But if you're surrounded by people who persist through challenges, you're much more likely to persist as well. Angela studied this phenomenon at the Seattle Seahawks football team during their championship years. The Seahawks had developed what Coach Pete Carroll called a culture of competition and growth. Every player, regardless of their position or experience level, was expected to continuously improve and to support their teammates' improvement. The team motto was always compete, and this wasn't just about competing against other teams. It was about competing against your own previous best performance. Players were encouraged to view every practice, every drill, every play as an opportunity to get a little bit better. But here's what made their culture truly powerful. They celebrated effort and improvement, not just outcomes. When a player made a mistake, coaches would focus on what could be learned from it. When a player showed improvement, even if they still weren't the best at their position, that progress was recognized and celebrated. This created an environment where players felt safe to take risks, to push their limits, and to persist through temporary failures. They knew that their effort would be valued regardless of immediate results. The same principles apply in other contexts. Consider the culture at KIPP schools, a network of charter schools that serve predominantly low-income students. KIPP schools have developed a systematic approach to building grit in their students. They use what they call character report cards alongside academic report cards. Students receive grades not just on math and reading, but on character strengths like grit, optimism, curiosity, and gratitude. This sends a clear message that character development is just as important as academic achievement. KIPP schools also use mantras and rituals that reinforce gritty values. Students might chant "work hard," "be nice," or "no shortcuts," "no excuses." These aren't just empty slogans, they're daily reminders of the school's core values. The results speak for themselves. KIPP students, despite coming from challenging backgrounds, consistently outperform their peers on standardized tests and are much more likely to graduate from college. So how can you create a culture of grit in your own life? Surround yourself with gritty people. Seek out friends, colleagues, and mentors who embody the values of persistence and passion for long-term goals. Their example will inspire and challenge you. Join or create communities focused on growth. This might be a running club, a book club, a professional association, or any group where people support each other's development and improvement. Establish family or team rituals that celebrate effort and improvement. Make it a habit to acknowledge and celebrate persistence, learning from failure, and progress toward long-term goals. Use language that reinforces growth mindset. Instead of saying, "I'm not good at this," say, "I'm not good at this yet." Instead of "this is too hard," say, "this will help me grow." Share stories of grit and perseverance. Make it a habit to tell and retell stories of people who achieved difficult goals through sustained effort. These stories shape our beliefs about what's possible. Remember, culture is not something that happens to you. It's something you actively create through your choices, words, and actions. Practical strategies. Building your grit starting today. Let's conclude with specific, actionable strategies you can implement immediately to begin building your grit. These are not theoretical concepts. They're practical tools that you can use starting today. Strategy 1. Develop your interest. Remember, passion isn't discovered. It's developed through exploration and deepening engagement. Action step. Identify an area that sparks your curiosity, even slightly. Commit to exploring it more deeply for the next month. Read books about it, talk to experts, try related activities. Don't worry about whether it's your true passion. Just follow your curiosity and see where it leads. Strategy 2. Practice deliberately. Most practice is ineffective because it's not targeted or challenging enough. Action step. Choose one specific skill within your area of interest. Identify your current weakest point in that skill. Design practice sessions that specifically target that weakness. Make it challenging enough that you need full concentration, but not so difficult that you become overwhelmed. Strategy 3. Connect to purpose. Find ways to connect your efforts to something larger than yourself. Action step. Write a brief statement about how your current goals and efforts might eventually benefit others or contribute to something meaningful. Keep this statement visible and review it regularly, especially during challenging times. Strategy 4. Cultivate hope through growth mindset. Develop the belief that you can improve through effort and effective strategies. Action step. Start viewing challenges and setbacks as information rather than indictments. When you encounter difficulty, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? And what strategy should I try next? Keep a record of improvements and progress, no matter how small. Strategy 5. Implement the hard thing rule. Choose one challenging pursuit and commit to it for a defined period. Action step. Select your hard thing and define your commitment period. Create a practice schedule and stick to it. When you want to quit, and you will, remind yourself that you're building the mental muscle of grit, which will serve you in every area of life. Strategy 6. Build your grit culture. Surround yourself with people and environments that support persistence and growth. Action step. Identify one relationship or community that embodies gritty values and invest more time and energy in that connection. Also, identify one relationship or environment that undermines your grit and consider how to minimize its influence. Your grit journey starts now. As we conclude this journey through the science of grit, I want you to understand something profound. You now possess knowledge that can fundamentally transform your life. But knowledge without action is worthless. The research is clear. Grit matters more than talent, intelligence, or circumstances in determining long-term success. But grit isn't a fixed trait. It's a set of skills and attitudes that you can develop starting right now. You have a choice to make. You can treat this summary as interesting information and then go back to your regular routine. Or you can treat it as a blueprint for becoming the kind of person who achieves extraordinary things through passion and perseverance. The world needs more gritty people. It needs people who don't quit when things get difficult, who persist through setbacks, who maintain their vision even when others lose faith. It needs people who understand that greatness isn't about being perfect. It's about being persistent. Your grit journey starts with a single decision. The decision to stick with something meaningful, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Choose your hard thing. Make your commitment. Begin your deliberate practice. Connect to your purpose. Cultivate your hope. Build your culture. And remember, you're not just building grit for yourself. You're becoming an example for others. You're showing the world what's possible when passion meets perseverance. If this summary has inspired you, I want you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're building a community of people committed to growth, perseverance, and achieving their highest potential. Second, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Share it with someone who's struggling with a difficult goal, someone who's thinking about quitting, someone who needs to be reminded of their own capacity for greatness. Third, take action. Don't let this be just another video you watched. Choose one strategy from today's summary and implement it immediately. Your future self will thank you. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Your journey to extraordinary achievement begins with a single decision. The decision to develop grit. That decision is yours to make. That power is yours to claim. That future is yours to create. The question isn't whether you have what it takes. The question is whether you'll choose to develop what it takes. Your grit journey starts now. Let's go. Thank you for joining me on Mind's Quotes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the science of grit, you'll love our upcoming summaries of other life-changing books. Subscribe now so you never miss insights that could transform your life. Remember, it's not about the talent you were born with, it's about the grit you choose to develop. Until next time, keep growing, keep pushing, and keep believing in your unlimited potential.